All right. So there's a lot more toddling, and I guess it's not really a toddler. A lot more fussy baby stuff. So I figured, you know, we got to see the Kodachrome Christmas, which is something that I very much enjoy. Kodachrome Christmas, and even better, Halloween. Kodachrome Halloween parades are the best. Absolute best. My absolute favorite footage of all time. Anyways, I'm Skip Alsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films, and those were some home movies from the Comden family, which we've been watching most of the week. And so thanks for tuning in for that. We got to see them travel a bunch. Did they really go to south of the border? Like, I missed it. I saw in the comments. So I'm going to go back and rewatch this. And that's the thing is, like, while I'm showing you these films, I'm setting up stuff for the next film that I'm showing, etc., etc. And the next film that I'm showing is Bread, second edition. We've shown the third edition, but this is the second edition. And unfortunately, the title is clipped, so I can't really get a year on this, but here we go. Enjoy.
About summer. Some of the best ones you can have right in your own backyard. Everything seems to taste so extra good. Maybe just because you can eat outside. Did you ever wonder how we get all these things? Do you know where bread comes from? Billy Roberts does, because his father works in a bakery. Billy knows that most bread, cakes, cookies, and pies come from wheat, which is grown in many parts of our country, but mostly in the flat prairie states. Wheat is one of man's most important foods, but it's always made into something else before it's eaten. Only the tiny grains which grow at the top of the stalks are used to make bread. Wheat is harvested by big machines called combines. As the combine moves through the field, it cuts the stalks. The grains of wheat are taken from the stalks and dropped into a storage bin. The stalks are blown from the rear of the combine. These stalks will be either plowed back into the ground or used as straw. When the storage bin on the combine is full, the wheat is emptied out into a truck which will haul it away. When all his wheat is harvested, the farmer sells it to a grain elevator or mill. There it is stored until needed or made into flour. At the mill, the grain is unloaded into pits, which empty out onto wide conveyor belts. The conveyor belts carry it to the machines, which make it into flour. The grain is ground many times by passing it between the sharp rollers of the milling machines. It is then sifted until only the fine flour remains. This is the flour that goes to the bakery to be made into bread. Sometimes Billy goes with his dad, who works here in this big, modern bakery. It's fun to watch them making bread, and even more fun when you can pretend you're a baker and work the big mixers. In the making of bread, the flour is first sifted into the mixing machine. Then water, yeast, sugar, shortening, and vitamins are added. All of these things are mixed together for a few minutes. The mixture, called a sponge, comes tumbling out. There's enough sponge here for over 900 loaves of bread. The sponge is wheeled into a warm room. Here, the yeast in the mixture causes it to rise. It swells and swells until it is many times bigger than it was at first. Then the baker punches holes in the sponge to let out some of the gas made by the yeast. Now it is left to rise again before another trip to the mixing machines. Next, a machine called a divider cuts the dough into loaf-sized pieces. It is then rounded into balls and allowed to rise again before being rolled into sheets. The sheets of dough are rolled up under a wire mesh, which makes loaves, just the right size for the pans. After it rises once more, the dough is ready for the big ovens, which can bake hundreds of loaves at a time. In about half an hour, the bread is baked and comes out of the oven. The loaves are taken from the pans. They cool as the conveyors carry them to the slicing and wrapping machines. A bakery makes many other things from flour besides bread. Many kinds of coffee cakes and rolls are made up here. It's fun to watch all the wonderful things that happen. Here they're making pies. Each woman at the table has her own part of the job to do. The ovens hold hundreds of pies at a time. Whether pies or cream puffs, flour is the most important part of everything made in a bakery. Other things, like chocolate, too, are used. It's melted down from a big bar and used to make frostings and delicious eclairs. Machines do much of the work in a modern bakery. These mixing machines work like human hands. This machine rounds the dough for making jelly donuts. The raw donuts fry in the hot shortening. The donuts cool as they ride up and down on the cooling conveyor. But these are not jelly donuts yet. Ever wonder how the jelly gets inside? Well, here's how. In this frying machine, the dough drops into the hot shortening. The smoke kind of gets in your eyes when you look inside the machine. Some fried cakes slide down a chute into a turning drum where they're sugared. For Billy, the best part of all is getting to eat anything he wants. There are so many things, it's hard to know where to begin. It's nice to have a father who works in a bakery, all right. But as Billy knows, there's a lot more to a fried cake or a piece of bread than the eating. There are the trucks and drivers who leave the bakery very early in the morning to take the bread to the stores before they're ready to open, so that the bread is as fresh as it can be when you buy it. They are the skilled people in the bakery who make the bread for us. The machines at the mill which makes the flour. And most important, the golden wheat, which makes it all possible.
Well, we need to make sure that the American Institute of Baking has signed off on this. Very important. So, behind me I have the film scanner set up, and yesterday I mentioned this. A film showed up out of the blue and basically came with this note that said, "Surprise free mystery film day. I found this one in an old flea market last weekend. I've seen it, and well, I thought you would enjoy it. Robert Patrick." Thank you, Robert. I have not watched this, so this is a premiere on the show. And I don't know what it is, except I know the title is called Concept of Man. Not Concept of Plan, Concept of Man. Let's see what we have here. I looked up the title, and what it brought up was not the film that I have here. I only looked at the title here and title screen, and it's a different film, which I don't have any information about. So let's watch and enjoy.
Today we will examine which is the true concept of man, the communist concept or the Christian concept. Will the Christian stand? Will you tell the truth as you understand it?
Yes.
The communist will stand. Will you tell the truth as you understand it?
Of course.
Be seated. Will the interrogator come forward?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may address the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is not a trial in the usual sense, for these men are not to be judged as individuals. What we are concerned with are their ideas and ideals. All of you, representing the world, must decide where the truth is, in Christianity or in communism. What is the truth about man? There will be no strict courtroom procedure here. Both Christian and communist will feel free to speak out at any time, as I too may speak. I will not take sides, nor should you, until you have heard what both men say. Now, gentlemen, How would you describe man?
Man is a spiritual being created in the image of God.
Well, there is no God. How can man be made in the image of him?
As such, he is precious in God's sight, of infinite worth.
Man is matter, nothing more.
Man is matter, you say. Would you explain?
Nothing more. Man has a heart, yes? Of course, you can hear it beat. Man has fingers, and they can touch. Man has eyes, they can see. Man has a tongue, it can taste. Man has a nose, it can smell. All these things. For man is a physical creature, but no spirit. Who has seen a spirit, or felt, or touched it? No evidence of a spirit has ever been found by any scientist.
Have you ever felt sorrow?
Of course.
Well, why did you feel bad? Did your eyes hurt? Or your ears? Did your finger hurt, or your tongue, or your nose? Why did you feel bad?
You are distorting my meaning.
Man has feelings apart from physical sensation. These feelings are spiritual in nature.
Emotions are the conditioned reflexes of environment. No more. Scientists have dealt with emotions in laboratory experiments that prove the physical nature of man.
What experiments?
Well, the earliest were by Pavlov, when he discovered the physical basis of hunger, of fear, of hate in dogs. He learned how to alter the personality through physical means.
Do you think man is merely an animal?
A higher animal.
And you feel he can be changed, his personality altered by artificial means?
It's a question of applying known laws. A child can be taken from his parents and reared by the state. He can be placed in state schools at an early age. He can be taught to revere any truths. Over and over and over again, the same truths can be repeated. Books can say certain things. Lessons can be taught in certain ways. And more than formal study, games and recreation can stress the same truths. And from all this, a person is created who believes certain things. Man can be shaped in the image of communism.
But man is made in the image of God, a social creature, concerned for the welfare of others.
Only fools believe that.
Trying to mold and shape a child with perverted knowledge is a violation of his God-given personality.
It is to free the child, to give him full knowledge that is undefiled by the selfish attitudes of a capitalist society.
You bring up selfishness. This, of course, is a bad trait. Man has shown many bad traits throughout history. He has shown himself capable of evil. Why is this, Christian?
Oh, sin is the natural state of man. As he is born, alienated from God, in this condition, he lives for himself. Now, he is free to choose his own destiny, but apart from God, man makes wrong choices. Choices which bring suffering to others.
Dribble.
Man has often tried to redeem himself from this natural state of sin, but he cannot.
Man can save himself.
Why do you think evil exists, communist?
Due to private ownership of property?
Well, did not Karl Marx write, original sin is at work everywhere?
He wrote that satirically. Oh, man fell. But not in a mythical garden through the temptation of a serpent. In the beginning, men worked together from necessity. Whatever they owned was owned in common. There was no private property and no private labor. With the invention of more complicated tools, private ownership came into the world. With private property came theft, violence, oppression. The class struggle began and has dominated the centuries. First in the form of slavery, then of feudalism, then of capitalism. Private property alienated man from the means of production, from the fruits of production, from his fellow man, and from himself.
And you think private ownership of property is man's curse?
Exactly.
And you, Christian?
Sin is man's curse.
I would like the jury to take note that there is a similarity between the two views to this extent. Both Christianity and communism hold that there was at one time a blameless state of man's existence. Both hold that man fell from this pure state into a condition of evil. But one holds that man can save himself from this state, and the other holds this to be impossible. We will probe deeper. Tell me, communist, how do you think man can save himself?
Salvation lies in the workers uniting, bringing about the revolution and ushering in communism, the total abolition of all private property. The revolution will forever free the whole of society from exploitation, oppression, and class struggles.
Salvation cannot come to man through external circumstances. Sin has roots that are internal, and salvation must take place within a man's heart.
How does this salvation take place?
God has sent his Son, Jesus Christ, to redeem men from their sins and give them eternal life. Now, God makes this gift of redemption in Jesus Christ, and man accepts. Salvation then depends upon a mutual bond of action between God and man. God speaks, man listens. God offers, man receives. God leads, and man fully commits himself to live each day showing active love for others and concern for their welfare.
Oh, you Christians make me laugh. You're as naive as babies. You create a God and then bow down before him. You are the worst idolaters of all.
Our subject is man, not God.
A Christian's view of man is based upon his concept of God. But we communists know there is no God. The communist vision is a vision of man without God.
Let us consider man's worth. Christian?
Man has infinite worth in God's sight. It was for man that God sent his Son to suffer and die on the cross. And man is worth much to God. And he expects each person to have regard for the worth of others, even as he regards himself.
Idealistic nonsense. Only those people who serve society have worth.
Elaborate.
Oh, very well. As Marx has said, the essence of man is no abstraction inherent in each separate individual. In its reality, it is the ensemble of social relations. This means man has worth in his social relationships. As a member of a class and a state, he is important, not of himself.
Well, Jesus spoke of the one sheep that was lost. He spoke of the very hairs on a man's head being numbered. A man has worth. He is important as a person. He has dignity.
You preach sermons to me, but what has happened in the so-called Christian nations that preach worth of the individual man? There are schools that won't allow certain children to come in and study. There are hospitals that won't allow certain people to come in and be treated. There are churches that won't allow certain people to come in and worship. And there are bombs that blast the synagogues and dirty names printed on the outside. Communism destroys all prejudice.
Well, there is prejudice in democratic countries, yes. But true Christians, wherever they are found, care for their fellow men as they care for themselves. Christians try to follow the example of Christ. He knew no prejudice. Samaritans were despised, as were sinners and social outcasts, but Christ ministered to them. He loved them all. And Christians today, he expects to follow his example of expressing brotherly love.
Gentlemen, let's get back to our subject. We are not here to discuss prejudice.
Communism works for the greatest good of man. But the enemies of the people must be destroyed, as cancer cells must not be allowed to go unchecked in the human body. And reactionary groups or individuals must not be allowed to infect a healthy socialist state.
So communism stamps out personal freedom.
Communism brings freedom to man.
Well, then why has a former communist vice president of Yugoslavia written, and I quote, "Modern history has no record of actions against the opposition of the masses which are as brutal, inhuman, and unlawful as those of communist regimes.
Only those who have stood against the welfare of the people have ever suffered under communism.
In the testimony thus far, you have seen that Christianity regards man to be of individual importance, while communism considers man important only in community.
Communism recognizes that society is more important than any one man or group. Communism works for the whole of mankind. In a capitalist country, each one is for himself. But in a communist country, each one works for the good of the other.
Communism forces a man to work at a job whether he wants to or not. Coercion does not make a man feel brotherly concern, only resentment that his personal freedom is being violated.
Workers are exploited only under capitalism.
The matter of coercion has come up. How does this properly relate to man?
Man has personal freedom before God. Man is born free in this sense. No external force should violate this freedom wherein man can take initiative to plan his own life.
Is coercion ever necessary?
To safeguard the same inherent freedom of others.
What do you say, communist?
Those who are tainted by the capitalist system must be made to see their error.
What do you mean?
For the glorious end of man is a communistic society. To achieve this, all methods are justified.
Prison, torture, death.
What does one man matter in comparison to the whole world? What does one life matter in achieving a worldwide classless society?
But communism does not bring a classless society.
The bourgeois landlord class is destroyed.
To be replaced by the power elite, who maintain dictatorial powers through police action.
Wrong. The party represents the dictatorship of the proletariat. The people rule.
Less than 4% of the people belong to the party, and there are no free elections.
The party represents the will of the people. The party is everything.
Yeah, even your God.
What?
The party has substituted itself in the place of God, tried to make man bow down and worship it. You called Christians idolaters. It is you who are the real idolaters, for you worship something that was built by man. But man is not God, nor can he make a God. Man is a creature made by God to have fellowship with him. In denying God, communism, in reality, is denying man.
Communism glorifies man. Communism sees man's rightful role in society. It works toward a time when all men will live as brothers, in peace and goodwill. Then there will be a heaven. Not in the dim afterlife, but here on earth. Christianity cannot save man. Only communism can do that. And it will.
You have heard the arguments about the concept of man. Now you must make a decision. Which will you accept? The world will judge.
That was absurd. I love it. The World Court, which looks like, as many of you said, Hollywood Squares. And the fact that you get to choose between communism or Christianity. You know, not Hinduism, not Buddhism, not Islam. Absurd. I love it. While we're looking at communism, I'm sorry, I haven't finished my lunch yet. Let's go ahead and take a look at Soviet agriculture.
This is a film report of a visit to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, made by the Agricultural Economics Delegation of the United States Department of Agriculture. The trip was limited to the heart of Russian agriculture and includes a record of current developments in the diversified crop area of the North Caucasus. The Ukraine, with its wheat, grain, livestock, and sunflowers. The Crimea, with its specialized fruit crops. The Asiatic regions of Uzbekistan, land of irrigated cotton. Kazakhstan, with its vast areas of spring wheat. The new lands of West Siberia, where low-yield wheat now grows. And finally, to the poultry and cattle farms in the northwest region near Leningrad. Following our arrival at the airport, we met at the Ministry of Agriculture building for conferences before starting a month-long, 12,000-mile trip to farms, research stations, and other agricultural enterprises in 10 major farming regions of the USSR. But before starting our working trip, like any tourists, we saw the sights of Moscow. The renowned Bolshoi Theater, once the Imperial Opera House, and still the seat of Soviet opera and ballet, was one of the highlights. And of course, the brick walls of the Kremlin, a must on every sightseer's list. Across the wide open space of Red Square is colorful and impressive St. Basil's Cathedral, started in 1654 by Ivan the Terrible and completed 125 years later. Then, off for our first look at agriculture, Soviet style. To help get a general view, we traveled through the Ukraine. Here, Soviet agriculture is the most diversified and most productive. In terms of land area and labor, the farms are huge. Both of these characteristics were especially predominant in the wheat-growing sections. In the wheat areas, we noted extreme contrasts. Mechanization is well along. Tractor-drawn combines do the heavy work. These crawler tractors were 54 horsepower models, and the combines cut a 16-foot swath. Manned by a crew of 5, the rigs were reminiscent of those seen in the United States during the 20s. But in the handling of grain after harvest, we found a great deal of hand labor and only limited mechanical equipment. Women traditionally have done a large part of the work on the farms. We were told that about 60% of the workers in agriculture were women. We also noted a lack of adequate storage facilities. On-farm storage is extremely limited and is largely flat warehouse or shed type. Even at the central storage points, facilities are limited. Many of the warehouses, even the new ones, are of the horizontal type. Portable electric blowers were used in many places to aerate the grain. Much of the machinery for handling the grain is inadequate. Although we did see some vertical or elevated facilities, the overall storage picture was not good, especially during periods of heavy grain movements from the farms. Near Krasnodar in the Kuban, the Soviets' best agricultural producing area, we visited the Scientific Research Institute for Oil Seed Crops. Remarkable progress has been made in breeding disease-free, high-yielding varieties of sunflowers. Today, sunflowers furnish 60% of the edible oil supply, but increases are planned for other oil crops. Castor beans, for example, will increase in importance since the Soviets have recently made progress in the mechanization of this crop. Experiments are also being conducted with such oil crops as peanuts, sesame, poppies, and others. Since grazing is not so widely practiced as it is in the United States, and livestock feed production is relatively undeveloped, the Soviets are also seeking ways to increase their forage crops. One way has been to grow corn in northern areas where the season is too short to produce grain. Here in western Siberia, near Novosibirsk, at the Scientific Research Institute for Grain Crop Production, corn is being grown in combination with other forage crops, such as lupin and soybeans. This work is very important to Soviet plans for increased milk and meat production. Production of livestock in the Soviet Union has not attained as high a place as grain production. The average Russian consumes only about 1/3 as much meat as does the average American. Research effort is being devoted to livestock in an attempt to lift their output of meat and milk. Among the livestock enterprises, dairying is furthest advanced. There are no cattle of the clearly beef type. However, some milk cattle of dual-purpose type, such as the Simmenthal or Swiss Cross, do provide reasonably beefy steers and heifers for slaughter. In addition, the breed maintains a good milk production record. These Simmenthal bulls were seen at the Kiev Livestock Experiment Station, which also serves as an artificial insemination center for farms in the Ukraine. At the same station, we were shown experimental calf housing, part of the Soviet research program on early weaning of calves. Livestock on both collective and state farms are held in large-scale units. Most barns have a capacity of 100 to 200 cows. The barns themselves are most frequently overbuilt and are generally the most substantial and costly farm buildings. As on most farms, the dairy cows are kept in barns the year round, and feed is cut in the fields and brought to the cows. Everywhere we traveled, we saw posters and signs extolling the virtues of the Soviet system, as well as signs urging increased production. In many cases, direct reference was made to American agriculture production. In the Soviet Union, production records of the United States are held up as goals to be attained. Hog houses in the Soviet Union are usually shed or gable roof structures. However, we did see some rather elaborate feeding houses. These were circular with high ceilings and held from 400 to 600 feeder hogs. Most are large white or white checkered breeds. Fat, heavy types have predominated. But like the United States, emphasis is now shifting to meat-type animals. Poultry production is not far advanced in the Soviet Union. Only a few farms, such as this one at Adler on the Black Sea, are experimenting with new ideas. This particular farm is far ahead in respect to economy of buildings and labor. Here we were told the laying rate averages 186 eggs per hen per year. Perhaps that is why this white Russian rooster is crowing. In general, much labor is required for production, even on the large farms like the Bolshevik State Farm near Leningrad. One of the largest poultry farms in the USSR, this farm supplies poultry and eggs for the Leningrad area. Although chickens predominate, ducks and geese are grown in larger numbers than in the United States. In addition, large numbers of guinea fowl are raised. In the Soviet Union, as in the United States, this fowl is considered a delicacy. To see how the Soviets were progressing with other farm commodities, we visited the Uzbek Republic in South Central Asia. Here, more than 2/3 of the Soviet cotton is grown. Overall, about 5 million acres are devoted to this crop in the USSR, and since all cotton is grown under irrigation, planned increases must await new irrigation development. The cotton is heavily fertilized, and most of the cultural operations are mechanized. In 1957, the yield was reported as averaging about 1,800 pounds of seed cotton per acre. Of the mechanical pickers we saw, the vertical spindle type was the most common. However, it should be noted that most of the cotton is hand harvested. In Uzbekistan, we also had occasion to visit the cooperative market at Tashkent, capital of this Asian republic. Here, nearby collective farms can sell perishables in excess of delivery quotas. Produce from individual allotments is also sold here. Such cooperative markets handle much of the fruits and vegetables, and a large part of livestock products sold in the Soviet Union. Almost any commodity may be purchased here. Anything from a loaf of bread to a bundle of firewood. Usually 2 or more villages are included within the boundaries of each collective or state farm. The farms we visited contain from 170 to as many as 2,000 households. One collective farm had 1,793 households containing 2,542 able-bodied workers. On this farm, each household was allotted an acre of ground, 1 milk cow, 2 hogs, 2 sheep, and some poultry. The houses in the plains of the Black Sea area and in South Central Asia are usually modest 4-room structures of stuccoed adobe brick with thatched roofs. However, in the timbered areas of the north, the houses are most often built of logs. We saw signs in many places urging the people to meet housing goals, and we observed evidences of activity in this field. An important part of every farm, whether collective or state, is the headquarters building. Oftentimes, the same structures serve as houses of culture. They are used for meetings and for entertainment of the people in the villages. From here, management of the farm directs the worker brigades, much as would management of a large factory. Although salaries, bonuses, and shares in the collective income are the main sources of incentive on Soviet farms, special inducements for achieving clearly specified goals are sometimes offered. A trip to the all-Union Agricultural and Industrial Exhibit in Moscow is one of these prizes. Here, the very best in Soviet agriculture is put on display. In addition to being an educated showcase for its own people, the Soviet exhibit also serves very well as a centerpiece to impress visiting delegations from other nations. Multilingual signs make it easy for the non-Russian to get the message. Visitors to the exhibit are treated to displays of fine Soviet livestock. Plots of major crops are available for close inspection. And of course, since the Soviets pride themselves on having made great strides in farm mechanization, the machinery exhibit is one of the highlights. In this area, the Soviets can do some bragging. Since the end of World War II, which caused much damage to farm equipment, the Soviets have made rapid progress. Since 1950, tractors on farms increased 53%, trucks 123%, and combines 87%. However, compared to the United States, Soviet farm machinery is cumbersome and not as adaptable, and in spite of recent increases, is not as numerous. Because the Moscow exhibit serves as the showcase for the entire Soviet Union, no expense has been spared to make it as impressive as possible. Each republic has its own pavilion, styled in its native architecture, in which to display its products. The USSR is putting great emphasis on improving its agriculture. It is making real progress, but the natural advantage of rich soil is seriously offset by limited rainfall and a short growing season. Agriculture is more in the public eye in the Soviet Union than in the United States. We take it for granted. But to the Russians, this exhibition helps to keep it uppermost in their minds. Achievements can be expected, yet it is unlikely that Russia can ever equal the USA in agricultural production.
Yeah, I get it. It's a comparison contrast. It's like, hey, USDA is like, let's see, we've got this other superpower that does agriculture. Let's see how they do it. And then this would have been shown at agricultural extension meetings across the United States. Yeah, there you go. Well, I've heard the rallying cry. They were sad. You guys were sad. That concept of man invoked the Hollywood Squares concept, but no Paul Lynde. So here's some Paul Lynde for you.
Alice, you missed with the toast. You missed with the eggs.
See you bored, Herbie. Try the coffee.
Coffee? Oh, your coffee's always a real treat.
This time it's instant Maxwell House coffee, like your mother makes.
Alice!
Herbie, you can't miss with instant Maxwell House coffee. You're just gonna love it.
That's great.
I knew it.
That's great tasting coffee, Alice.
Then it's all right about the toast?
Uh-huh.
And about the eggs?
Uh-huh. Just pour me another cup of that crazy coffee.
You can't miss with instant Maxwell House coffee. Right?
Great tasting coffee, Alice.
It's another fine product of General Foods.
That was not Joanne Worley, as somebody asked in the comments. I don't know who that was. Wonderful character actress. And, of course, Paul Lynde. Plus, I've shown that before. But man, I still am like, how did they do that with the coffee, like going across the kitchen table? Like, what is going on? So maybe one day we will unearth an article that talks about it. But that was part of a project I did for Duke University's Ad Views, where it was Maxwell House instant coffee that was being handled by this Benton and Bowles ad agency, and that was just phenomenal. Yeah, thanks for tuning in today. Very much appreciate your eyeballs and your comments. Pretty interesting stuff. I very much like those mid-60s Cold War, positioning ourselves in a way to say, like, it's like either you're a Christian or you're a communist, and it's like, no, that doesn't make really any sense. But I love that that position, and yeah. So thanks for indulging me with that, and thank you, Robert Patrick, for donating that film. We had 2 films that were donated to us that we showed this week. Of course, the wonderful Piro and the Scale, and then what we saw today. And then I showed a couple of films from the Beauty Films Institute, or Beauty Films Incorporated, which I got from eBay for like $4, not including shipping, of course. And that's something I enjoy doing periodically, is I get so many films. It's like, why are you buying even more films on eBay? But occasionally I just kind of dip my toe in to see what's out there, because that's how I found my favorite film, Pride on Parade. And I purposely don't bid on films that other people are bidding on, because I have found that some of my most favorite films are ones that are just so weird and oddballish, or niche, that nobody is interested in it. And I found great things that way. So I'm not trying to compete with other collectors or things like that. I'm really just like, what is this? This is weird. It's just like when I go to a record store, I go to the free bin or the $1 bin and just see what's in there. And oh man, sometimes there's just crazy stuff. Like I found a bunch of pipe organ pizza parlor souvenir records, which I was like, what is this? I guess this is a thing. You go to a pizza parlor and somebody plays a pipe organ periodically, and there were enough of them around that there were these souvenir albums. People, let's go get some pizza and listen to some rollicking pipe organ music. So that's why I enjoyed doing what I'm doing. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you so much, Kevin, for contributing twice. Once for the concept of man film, and then once for the nod to Paul Lynde, may he rest in peace. And you can contribute. The easiest way is just to hit thumbs up or like. Even if you've done it recently, it helps with the numbers. Another way is you can go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks, or Venmo even, like Venmo at skip-Elsheimer. And that money will go towards buying things like weird dongles for Mac computers. They basically make it to where everything is a dongle, and sometimes you have 2 dongles, and they have these sexy things that don't really have any port. They have very subtle ports, but then you have to have a bunch of dongles to make it fit with anything. So that's what sometimes you spend money on, dongles. Let me say dongle one more time. And also you can use the super thanks button as a way to support us as well. But even just you showing up is really what we like. And so thank you for being there for us. And we'll be back tomorrow, which is Friday. I should say that if you are in the Triangle area, 2 things. Saturday, I'm going to be doing a screening of a bunch of Big Bug movie trailers at Bugfest at the Science Museum at 3:30 at the Daily Planet Cafe. Then on Sunday, I'll be introducing a film by my friend, introducing my friend who wrote a book about this film, Cockfighter, which is a Monty Hellman film, and she wrote a book about it, Kayla Janice. We've had her on the show early in COVID. She's Canadian, and she's coming through, and will be there in person, selling some of her books, and she's done some amazing books, including House of Psychotic Women, did an amazing documentary about folk horror. Anyways, so that's on Sunday at the Alamo Draft House in Raleigh. Come on down. I don't have the time. I feel like it's like 6, 7, not sure. Anyways, I'll see you tomorrow. Everybody, please rewind and love each other, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.